Building on architecture risk management, you now move to the most practical way to reduce risk across an entire portfolio without slowing delivery. Reusable architecture patterns. Patterns are how you turn what good looks like into an enterprise default. So teams stop reinventing foundational decisions in every program. When leadership asks why delivery takes so long or why risk keeps returning, patterns are often the missing link. When you build and govern patterns well, you reduce rework, accelerate onboarding for new teams, and make architecture governance lighter because the default choice is already agreed. With that purpose clear, you should define a reusable pattern in plain terms. A reusable architecture pattern is a repeatable, approved solution approach to a common problem, including its intent, boundaries, required controls, operational expectations, and decision rules for when it applies. It is not only a diagram and it is not only a template. It is an enterprise agreement that compresses experience into a reusable form, so the organization learns once and benefits many times. The real value is not standardization for its own sake. The real value is predictable delivery outcomes and consistent risk posture. Now that you understand what a pattern is, you can address the common concern that patterns reduce creativity. In reality, patterns remove low-value variability from foundations so teams can innovate where it matters, such as customer experience, product differentiation, and new business capabilities. If 5 programs each invent identity controls differently, you do not get innovation. You get duplicated cost, inconsistent security, and confusing operations. Patterns make the basics easy and consistent, which frees teams to move faster at the edges while keeping the core stable and secure. With the innovation concern addressed, you now apply the success test that keeps patterns honest. A pattern is successful only if it makes delivery faster, reduces risk, and improves operational supportability at the same time. If the pattern is too complex, teams will bypass it. If it is too vague, it will be interpreted differently and lose value. If it is too strict, exceptions will explode and governance will become slower. Your goal is to design patterns that are easy to adapt, easy to assure, and strong enough to deliver consistent outcomes. With the success test clear, you now think like a portfolio leader rather than a document author. You do not need dozens of patterns. You need a small catalog of high-impact defaults that appear in almost every program, such as identity and privilege access, network segmentation and connectivity, logging and monitoring, and data protection and secrets. These patterns create leverage because they prevent repeated debates in every program and reduce the number of unique designs operations must support. A small catalog also stays maintainable, which is essential if you want patterns to remain trusted over time. With a catalog approach, you now focus on adoption because unused patterns are just shelfware. You design patterns so delivery teams can understand them quickly, including when the pattern applies, what it provides, what it requires, and what trade-offs it implies. You also make patterns easy for governance forums to assess, so reviews become faster and less subjective. Most importantly, you ensure patterns come with a clear path to yes, meaning teams can adopt them without needing constant interpretation from architects. Adoption is the difference between architecture influence and architecture theater. With adoption as your goal, you begin with identity because identity is the control plane of modern enterprises. An identity pattern clarifies how users and services authenticate, how authorization decisions are enforced, how access is reviewed, and how identity events are monitored. It also clarifies how identity aligns to business roles and responsibilities, so access remains accountable and auditable. When identity is standard, every program benefits because teams stop creating custom access logic that becomes inconsistent and hard to sustain. Identity patterns also reduce risk because they make the secure approach the default approach. With identity standardized, you now address privilege access because it is where the highest impact risk concentrates. A privilege access pattern defines how elevated access is granted, how it is time bound, how it is approved, and how it is monitored and reviewed. It also defines how emergency access works without becoming a permanent loophole. From a leadership perspective, this pattern is about protecting trust and preventing catastrophic misuse. From an operational perspective, it is about ensuring privilege actions are visible, traceable, and manageable during incidents and urgent changes. With identity controls in place, you now move to network segmentation because segmentation is how you contain both attackers and operational failures. A segmentation pattern defines trust zones, boundaries, and communication rules that keep critical systems isolated from unnecessary exposure. The goal is not to create a complex network. The goal is to create a network that enforces sensible containment, so a compromise or misconfiguration in one area does not spread into business critical services. When segmentation is patterned, programs stop improvising boundaries and governance can evaluate designs consistently. With segmentation clear, you now define secure connectivity patterns because enterprises must balance security with productivity. A secure connectivity pattern clarifies how administrative access occurs, how service to service access is controlled, and how partner connectivity is handled. It also clarifies how external exposure is reduced through strong boundaries rather than through trust. The leadership value is that productivity and secure operations can coexist without risky shortcuts. The architectural value is that connectivity becomes consistent and reviewable, reducing the number of one-off connections that become future vulnerabilities. With connectivity patterns set, you now standardize logging because visibility determines how quickly you detect issues and how confidently you can explain what happened. A logging pattern defines what must be logged for critical services, how logs are centralized, how retention supports investigations and audits, and how logs support both security and operational use cases. When logging is not standard, incidents become slower and more expensive because teams cannot correlate events across systems. When logging is standard, incident response becomes predictable, and executives gain confidence that the organization can see and manage risk in real time. With logging defined, you now build the monitoring and alerting pattern that turns raw signals into operational control. This pattern defines what healthy looks like, what conditions matter, how alerts are prioritized, and how escalation occurs with clear ownership. It also prevents alert fatigue by ensuring alerts are actionable and mapped to response processes. Leadership value appears here because reliability improves when teams can detect problems early and respond consistently. Architecture value appears because monitoring becomes part of the design contract, not an optional extra that gets postponed. With visibility patterns in place, you now standardize data protection because data is the asset regulators, customers, and attackers care about most. A data protection pattern defines how sensitive data is classified, how access is governed, how encryption is expected, and how data exposure is minimized across integrations and storage locations. The strongest data protection patterns do not only add controls, they reduce exposure by limiting where sensitive data travels, reducing duplication, and ensuring systems only receive what they truly need. This approach reduces both breach impact and compliance complexity. With data protection clear, you now address secrets and key management because hidden credentials are one of the most common causes of compromise. A secrets and key management pattern clarifies how secrets are stored, accessed, rotated, monitored, and retired. It also clarifies how systems authenticate to each other, without embedding credentials in code or configuration. This pattern is a leadership enabler because it reduces systemic risk that is otherwise invisible until an incident occurs. It is also an operational enabler because credential lifecycle becomes predictable and manageable across teams. With core patterns defined, you now ensure they remain trusted over time through governance. Each pattern needs an owner, a review cadence, and a mechanism for improvement based on incidents, audit findings, and delivery feedback. Without governance, patterns become outdated and teams stop trusting them. With governance, patterns become living assets that embody organizational learning. You also align patterns to architecture principles and standards, so governance forums can assess designs quickly. This makes patterns a strategic tool, not just a technical reference. With governance established, you now handle reality. Not every system can adopt every pattern immediately. You define controlled variants for different contexts, such as higher requirements for critical systems and lighter requirements for low-risk environments, while still maintaining a consistent direction. When a pattern cannot be followed, you use a transparent exception process with compensating controls, residual risk acceptance, and time-bound review. This preserves momentum without allowing fragmentation to return quietly. The goal is flexible adoption with controlled risk, not uncontrolled diversity. With all pieces in place, you can now see patterns as a portfolio accelerator. In a customer services modernization program, teams adopt the identity and privilege access patterns to achieve consistent access governance across new and legacy components. They apply segmentation and secure connectivity patterns to reduce exposure and contain failure. They adopt logging and monitoring patterns so operational teams can detect and respond quickly across the new landscape. They apply data protection and secrets patterns to reduce sensitive data exposure during transition. The program moves faster because teams reuse proven defaults instead of debating fundamentals. And leadership gains confidence because risk is consistently managed. Let's now discuss the key takeaways from what you learned so far, so you can standardize identity, network logging, and data protection using reusable architecture patterns. Reusable patterns scale good decisions by making secure and supportable defaults easy to adopt across portfolios. You focus on a small catalog of high-impact patterns, design them for adoption, align them to governance, and keep them current through clear ownership and continuous improvement. You include controlled variants and transparent exceptions, so delivery stays practical while risk remains visible and managed. When patterns become the enterprise default, you accelerate delivery and reduce risk at the same time. As you move into the next lecture, look across your portfolio and identify the foundational decisions you keep repeating, because those are your best pattern candidates. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next videos in this playlist. Like this video so it reaches more leaders and architects. Comment with the pattern your organization most urgently needs, and share it with someone involved in platform standards or architecture governance.